In today's video, we're going to talk about the newest wave of information surrounding Honkai Star Rail version 4.4 and 4.5, and especially why these two updates might end up being some of the most controversial patches the game has seen so far. We're looking at the rising discussion around special versions of characters, why Himeko, Robin, and Aventurine are now at the center of attention, and what this could mean for the future direction of the game's story, meta, and banner cycle. Sirene's banner and reruns are finally coming, and you can save up to 25% on these banners at lootbar.gg. Right now, Lootbar has a 3.7 limited offer, a 6,480 shards pack for only $70, while it costs $100 in-game. That means you're saving $30 on Lootbar. I just enter my UID and select a server. I received the shards right away on my account. Besides Honkai, you can also top up in Genshin. Lootbar has over 100,000 satisfied users and also supports PS5 and Xbox top-ups. I regularly use Lootbar for my giveaways, so I can personally recommend it. Use my link in the description for an additional 10% discount. By the way, old users can also get up to 5% off. This is not about guarantees or confirmed outcomes. This is about what is being discussed, what patterns suggest, and why players are reacting so strongly right now. Let's get into it. For the last few weeks, the conversation around version 4.4 and 4.5 has started to feel very different from past updates. Instead of talking about entirely new faces or brand new regions with fresh casts, the focus has shifted heavily toward alternate versions of existing characters. The names that keep appearing in player discussions are Himeko for 4.4, then Robin and Aventurine in 4.5. Again, none of this is being treated as locked in stone. This is all based on circulating information and long-term trends the community has been tracking. But even with that uncertainty, the reaction has already been intense. Himeko's situation stands out immediately. From a design and gameplay perspective, she has always been one of those characters that people care about emotionally, even if her combat role has struggled to keep up with the meta. Her original kit leans toward follow-up damage and burn effects, but over time, pure fiction and later endgame modes exposed how limited that role became without extremely specific support. When March 7th received Evernight, it set a powerful precedent. It showed that older characters could be fully reimagined with modern mechanics instead of being left behind. That single shift alone changed how people now view the future of the roster. So when discussion started to center on Himeko receiving similar treatment in 4.4, the emotional response made sense. Players aren't just reacting to potential damage numbers or team positioning. They're reacting to the idea that Himeko might finally be allowed to stand in the spotlight instead of being pushed off to the side of the meta. There's also something else underneath that excitement. Her story presence has always felt unfinished. There's history connected to her across the broader Honkai universe, and Star Rail has only touched it lightly so far. A reimagined form creates room to reopen that door without rewriting her entire past. At the same time, not everyone feels comfortable with the idea. A growing number of voices are worried that this approach is becoming a pattern instead of an exception. Version 4.2 already points toward a special version of Silverwolf. Version 4.3 moves in the same direction with Blade, then 4.4 with Himeko, followed by 4.5 with both Robin and Aventurine at once. Even without assuming anything is final, the rhythm itself is what's raising eyebrows. Players are starting to ask whether version 4 is quietly turning into a full alternate form era instead of a traditional New World era. That leads directly into the conversation around Robin. From a gameplay standpoint, she is still one of the strongest harmony supports in the game. Her ability to increase team damage, restore energy, and synchronize burst windows gives her lasting value even as new characters arrive. Because of that, her possible reappearance in a new form has confused a lot of people. With characters like Dan Heng or March 7th, the logic was clear. Their original versions had faded in power. Robin's hasn't. That's why part of the community is asking what role a new version of her would even fill. Would she move into a damage-dealing role? Would her kit shift toward survivability? Would she trade harmony utility for a risk-reward style centered on self-buffing? There are no answers yet, only theory. Then there's Aventurine, and the reaction here has been very different. From the moment his name entered the wider discussion, the financial side of the community lit up. He already has one of the most distinct personalities in the game, and his defense-scaling shield gameplay gave him a clear identity on release. Speculation around an alternate version pushes that identity even further. Some imagine him abandoning pure defensive play and stepping into a high-burst damage role, possibly tying his mechanics deeper to chance systems, coins, or resource gambling. Others think he may remain a sustained character but evolve into a hybrid that converts defense into offensive pressure. These are not predictions. They're reflections of how strongly his design invites reinterpretation. What's interesting is how quickly all of this feeds into a much bigger question about version 4 as a whole. Long before version 4.4 was even discussed, there were already wide expectations that the next major story arc would introduce a distinct cultural and visual shift. Early hints pointed toward an area inspired by old-world traditions blended with science fiction. Now that direction seems less certain. In its place, the emerging concept of Plan Arcadia has taken over community discussion. The tone of that imagined setting leans heavily toward spectacle, entertainment, illusion, and staged reality, which naturally ties back to characters like Robin and Aventurine. This is where the Penacony 2.0 comparisons began, not because the environments are identical, but because the emotional DNA feels similar. Stage lights, performance, masks, curated identities, and a blurred line between truth and show. For some players, this feels like a fresh expansion of that earlier theme. For others, it feels like the game is hesitating to fully move on. From a business point of view, the shift makes uncomfortable sense. Alternate versions of already popular characters are safer than completely new ones. They come with built-in fans, existing emotional attachment, and proven banner appeal. That doesn't make the design lazy by default, but it does explain why the cycle might lean in this direction during a period of uncertainty. Historically, Hoyoverse has done this before. Honkai Impact leaned heavily on battlesuit evolution rather than constant character replacement, and that approach sustained that game for years. But Star Rail isn't Honkai Impact. Its story structure, world travel system, and faction-driven plot all push it in a different direction. If version 4 becomes too heavily centered on alternate forms, some players worry the universe might start to feel smaller instead of larger. Instead of meeting new cultures and new civilizations, the Trailblazer could end up orbiting the same core cast again and again in slightly altered forms. There is also the issue of power balance. Special units don't just replace older kits. They often leap far ahead of them. If versions 4.4 and 4.5 truly do introduce multiple new high-impact variants back-to-back, then the gap between older limited characters and modern releases might widen fast. That has implications for free-to-play players, for long-term account value, and for how often players feel pressured to pull rather than save. At the same time, there is a very real emotional upside to this approach. Seeing older characters regain story relevance can make the universe feel cohesive instead of disposable. Instead of watching 50 characters pass through for a single patch and then vanish, the focus becomes continuity. Some players strongly prefer that, even if it means fewer brand new faces. Version 4.4 being potentially centered around Himeko also carries emotional risk. Himeko's role in the wider Honkai franchise has always been tragic. Every time she returns in a new form, players carry that history with them. A revitalized version could be empowering, but it could also reopen old wounds depending on how the story treats her. That emotional uncertainty is part of what makes the discussion around her so intense. Then, version 4.5, potentially stacking Robin and Aventurine together, adds another layer. If both arrive in the same update window, the pull pressure alone will be extreme. Harmony support plus a high-value sustain or damage hybrid is not a light combination. Even players who planned carefully for months could be forced into difficult choices. That tension is already visible in how people talk about saving, skipping, or risking everything at once. Now I want to hear how this looks from your side. Does a 4.4 focused on Himeko sound like the comeback she's earned, or does it feel like the game is leaning too hard into reusing the same faces? Does a 4.5 with Robin and Aventurine in new forms sound exciting, overwhelming, or unnecessary? And more importantly, do you think this pattern strengthens the story or shrinks it? If you want more breakdowns like this on upcoming updates, character shifts, and where the game might be heading next, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And as more information develops around 4.4 and 4.5, we'll revisit this and see how the picture changes. Buy 6,480 Oneiric shards with 3.6 limited pack for only $71 at lootbar.gg. Returning users can also grab an extra coupon for up to 5% off. Link in the description.